just so hard to go out and be out there in the street. It started when I was 16.
I was about 8 when that happened.
I was like 15, like 16. I was just barely starting. I started at 16 years old.
If a child has sex with somebody, especially if they're an adult, remember that child cannot consent to have sex. So under the law, that is a sexual assault of a child.
We were doing training with Child Protective Services. They've been very receptive, and we've done a lot of training with them. And occasionally you will hear of cases where maybe a mom can't make her rent, and she has a couple of young teenage daughters, and the 50-year-old landlord says, hey, let me have my way with the 14-year-old. And there's maybe different opinions in the legal community, whether that's trafficking or just child exploitation. The bottom line is wrong. It needs to be addressed. We have the perception that any pecuniary benefit, anything that's a pecuniary benefit that involves a child and sex is going to be trafficking. And we like to forward that to the law enforcement agencies. We like to get that up to the DA and let them just make the legal determination on that. But that type of stuff, again, it parallels with exploitation.
I've noticed that there are several states still behind in this issue of human trafficking. For instance, there are some states that still believe the age of consent is 14 years of age, whereas the federal law still states clearly that a child under 18 that is in prostitution, stripping, or pornography is a victim of human trafficking.
So human trafficking is, yes, it is. It's a hugely misunderstood term, and it's unfortunate because I think a lot of the times people think of human trafficking and they think of people coming in from another country and being taken advantage. No, human trafficking happens here with citizens of this country, with children of this country. It doesn't happen only to outsiders or people coming in from a foreign country, if you will.
The greatest myth on minors who are U.S. citizens is that, oh, it can only happen to people who get here illegally. Or, no, that's not happening in my community. Or, I live in a small town, that only happens in big inner cities. False, false, false. Number one, 50% of all trafficking victims are children. 80% are women. Number two, the majority of trafficking victims are U.S. citizens. They're teenage runaways or throwaways. And number three, it can't happen in my community because we've got so many churches, or we're a small town. We're an affluent suburb. It can't happen here. In fact, the big cases have been caught in small towns because these people are highly mobile and have been in the suburbs. I mean, if you don't think it can happen, just look next door. It can happen right in your community. That's a huge myth.
It's a very complicated issue right now hitting our community. And we're a hub because we have a major, I-10 is a major trafficking hub. So it runs all the way across the United States. So I think that it's important that San Antonio does become a leader in this issue. And there's not a lot of community leaders out there right now.
Mothers, grandmothers, daughters. It can happen to anybody. It can happen even in your face.
There's a demand for the sex trade in the United States. I think I read an article the other day that the total profits from Major League Sports is $21 billion. The total profits from the sex trade is $32 billion. And so I know that there is a demand in this country for commercial sex. And so how do we reduce the demand? I'm not completely sure, but I do know that it has to begin in the home. The reason we have a supply of domestic minor victims, we believe, is because many of these children are runaway children. They had ran away from the home that they live in. They had been cast out from the home they live in and fallen under the radar of CPS. Certainly not to CPS's fault, but they're just out there, whether they run away on their own or not, or whether they've been kicked out by their parents.
Well, it's very heartbreaking. You see that the average age for U.S. citizen kids that tend to run away is about 12 or 13 years old. There's this pimp culture that's in our community right here in San Antonio that they're targeting these, and there's Johns that they're trying to serve, and it's very prevalent. You can go on, as I said, we call the dark side of the internet. There's Craigslist services. There's even sites you can go on where the Johns rate the girls and the pimps and how they're treated and how much hassle they have to go to. There's local newspapers and things that provide current events and stuff that you can go on the back page, and they don't come out and say kids for sale for sex, but you have to look beneath the surface, as the HHS program says. There's escort services that are offered. There's more leads than there are law enforcement officers to follow this up. And you can go to any truck stop in the state of Texas and you get on a CB radio and call for some young sweet stuff, and somebody's going to come hook you up. They're going to bring a kid to you to get sex right there in a truck stop.
In summer school, I met this guy. He was 18 and he was the janitor at my school. He just graduated. And he kept telling me how much he liked me. And so when me and my mom finally got into a fight, I ran away with him for like 4 days.
How old were you?
14. And, sorry, go ahead.
What were those days like that you were with him?
I realized a lot of stuff about him, like he wasn't what I thought he was going to be. Because, I mean, when you're 14, sex shouldn't be like that. I mean, you shouldn't have sex, period, when you're that young. It kind of ruined it for me. Because he was so old, I felt obligated, you know?
The state governments have just started getting involved with prosecuting these kinds of cases. And when they began to come to our attention here in Bexar County, the Family Justice Unit of the District Attorney's Office seemed like the right place for them to go, because we have lots of experience dealing with kids, dealing with crimes of a sexual nature. And the one thing that's been very interesting is this is a complete and totally different group of kids than what you might typically see in a child sex abuse case. Most children are molested by friends or family, someone that they know. And while that can be part of a trafficking case, quite often traffickers are individuals these kids have not had a long association with and are typically not family, although there are family cases.
I think a lot of people are not aware, and it's unfortunate that, and by people not being aware, I'm including people that are so-called, educated, well-prepared, professionals in the caring field that have no knowledge. And that can be very frustrating, and it can be very challenging in trying to provide that education to professionals, whether that be in the medical field, whether that be in the legal field. That's an area I think that is very much lacking, and of information and education on this very topic. And of course, counselors, social workers, just again, the full gamut of services, professionals in these different categories that need to become educated so that we become better equipped to serve these victims.
Our worldview of those who have been arrested and then potentially are domestic minor trafficking victims, and that is to not look at them as a criminal, but to maybe to look a little bit deeper and find out, how did this little girl wake up and want to be a prostitute? Probably not. And so I think it becomes a cultural shift for us to look at how this young girl or young boy ended up in the position they were in, and that's paradigm shifts take time. I think our law enforcement is working very hard at re-scripting their investigative process when they interview these young people that come into the detention facilities upon their arrest, and I think that in itself will be a powerful tool. And then once we can provide aftercare that's appropriate for these domestic minors, we may see some success rates and not recidivism.
Because for a long time I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I was sick or out of my mind, crazy.
because I couldn't understand why I had the thoughts that I had or the ways that I had, or why I did the things that I did, because it's not like I enjoyed sleeping with these people. It's not like I enjoyed, you know, using people. But I was just so angry and so miserable.
They don't necessarily see themselves as a victim. A lot of times they don't have a gun to their head and are being forced to have sex with somebody. What we have seen a lot of is coercion. They'll have another individual, usually a female, coerce the victim into doing what she's doing, prostitution, and telling them how glamorous it is, and you know how easy it is, and that's been the majority. We've seen some other cases where somebody was kidnapped and forced to have sex and brutally raped and things like that, but that's not the majority of the cases. In our experience, at least, that's the minority. The majority are girls that are runaways that, you know, had no place to go, and they're befriended by an older, usually woman, and who is already working as a prostitute, and usually working for somebody else, and you know, like I said, just coerced into it by, you know, being told stories of, you know, easy money, and so a lot of times these young girls who cannot even legally consent to have sex are, you know, making money for somebody else by having sex with, you know, numerous Johns out there.
And what I want to reiterate now in this portion, that pimping is no longer guerrilla pimping. People don't walk down the street and throw you in their car anymore, okay? That's not how it works. In 2011, 2012, it is finesse pimping. It is coercion by definition. The promise of money, the promise of a lifestyle, the promise of a car and a house and a place and clothes and stability and this false intimacy, this codependent love that they create is how the pimps keep you there.
Did you ever see yourself as a victim? No. I put myself in those situations. A lot of the time.
Some of my clients state that they don't like to see themselves as victims for one important reason. When they verbally say that they're a victim, that's acknowledging that the individual or the people that have hurt them in the past accomplished exactly what they set out to do, to hurt them, to victimize them. It's a very difficult thing to accept that you are a victim. It's very hard.
So when you come into this line of work, you're still green behind the ears, and you just hear the stories over and not sure if they're true or not. But you know, you just hear it from different people and you see things, and then it's just like it all starts falling into place. You know, they're more victims, you know, than outlaws. You know, society sees sex workers as criminals, thieves, and dope fiends, and as crooks, and you know, the worst of the worst. When they're not, you know, they're victims. They're victims. Aside from being victims over and over every day, it's like somewhere down the line in their life, you know, it shifts from victim to survivor, even though they're being victimized every day.
He was charged with aggravated assault, aggravated sexual assault, and promotion of child pornography. He wasn't charged with pimping and pandering. He wasn't charged with minor trafficking. He was not charged with compelling prostitution. He wasn't charged with anything. They offered him 3 years TDC. If we could identify children, great. save them when they're young. If they slip through the cracks and society misses them, the police don't see it, their parents don't understand, and they make it to adulthood, we should be able to recognize these adults as victims, not criminals.
If I had to guess, I would say probably right around 14 is when a lot of times the kids will start becoming rebellious and want to run away from home, don't want to follow rules, and a lot of times they think they know more than their parents, or, you know, whoever their guardian is, and they run away from home to be in an environment where they don't have all the rules that they have at home. And then, well, I mean, at the age of 13 or 14, you really can't get a job or anything, so they a lot of times resort to what they call survival sex. They have no other way to survive out on the street, so they do what they have to do, and then it gets morphed into prostitution.
I would have sex with them just to live in their house. Like, it was crazy.
And like not even 5 minutes after being out of the house, I met some guy who first introduced me to ice. We started doing ice. And I kept telling him I wanted to go back to Ricky, which was the old guy. I kept telling him, well, I want to go back there and miss him. But he told me, well, I have a way that you can make other money. You don't have to go out there and depend on somebody else. And I already knew that he ran escorts. He had them staying up in hotels, and they would go to the hotel and see him, and that's how he would make his money. And he knew how old I was. I think I told him I was like a year older than I was, and that was it. But he knew I was young. And he told me, well, I'll hang out with this girl and she'll teach you how to do it. And so I did, because he made it seem so much better than it really was. Well, I started hanging out with that girl, and I kept telling him, I don't want to do it tonight, I don't want to do it tonight. Well, the first time I did it, it was just awkward. Some guy came, and I got $150 for it, but it felt so nasty. It didn't feel right.
You know, you've seen a lot. I mean, what, over 10, 11, right?
10 years.
Over 10 years.
Yes, I know. Got in raped, got in stabbed, got in thrown out of the car. Yeah, I've been through a lot.
Well, I'm 21 years old. I started working in the streets when I was 16. I've been raped and hit a couple times. When I was 21, my friend and I, we went partying at some bar. So my friend left with some guy she met. I stayed there, so when it was time to close, some guy offered me a ride. There were 2 or 3 guys hiding in the backseat of the truck. He took me far, far away. They did a lot of bad things to me and left me there. In the morning when I woke up, I did not know where I was at. I really don't remember nothing. This happened to me and I still do some things. Is there any help or hope to get cleaned up? No kids, no family. Signed, crying out for help.
And it's unfortunate that the community as a whole criminalizes these kids too, because when you really come down and see a kid that is a 12 or 13-year-old that is being trafficked or is out there prostituting, you know, we immediately see, you know, oh, well, they're on drugs, they're doing this for their drugs. But, you know, we tend to forget that what caused these kids to be out there, you know, and we look at their behavior, but we don't look at the cause. Why is this kid out there prostituting? Why is this kid out there hooked on drugs? You know, most of these kids, you know, if you see their referral history, they're a chronic runaway and they have an extensive truant history. That's all. People see them as dangerous criminals, and they're not. You know, when you have a 12 or 13-year-old having sex with an adult, a 20-year-old, 30 or 50-year-old, and we call them criminals, you know, something's wrong with this.
Like I said, my uncle was living with us at the time. And his girlfriend had the baby, but she ended up leaving because my grandma made her mad, so she left, and my uncle was there by himself with me. And it was actually, there was just a few of us living there after that, because a lot of people moved out. A lot of the people living there left, and so I had my own room. My uncle's room was right across, and then my grandma's house was my grandma's room was in the front. And I always used to hang out with my uncle because he's who I started smoking weed with and drinking and stuff. And Well, because I was close to my uncle because he was like my best friend. So one night we just got really, really, really drunk. And, well, I got really drunk on my own. My uncle raped me that night. And I stayed there. I didn't tell my grandma or anything for like a month. And one day I called my dad's mom when I was at school, and I told her I needed her to come get me. And she took me to Corpus with her. I just took off because it was kind of hard to live with them.
Did you tell them why you left?
No, I haven't talked to my grandma since then.
My opinion is that a runaway is at greatest risk, especially if they're a habitual runaway. What are they running away from? I mean, is there something going on at home? So that's a factor that we look at strongly is how many times a child has been reported runaway. And they may not have always even been reported. A lot of times, if the child is a habitual runaway, the parents kind of get tired of reporting the child as a runaway. And then the other thing is that if the parents are doing something like pimping the kids out or forcing them to have sex in exchange for money from relatives or from wherever else, which we have seen, they're not even going to report them as a runaway.
And I remember just a lot of times when she would hit me.
Hit you when you complained?
When I didn't want to go out with these guys. And, she would be crying in the restroom or crying to my mom, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. She would say, you have to go, just go, you got to do it, you have to. And my sister would be crying. She would be like, why do I have to go if I don't even like this guy? And he would give my mom money so he can take us out, take me out. Not everybody else, me, only me.
I know that from the time she ran away from my mother, from that point, I know she was prostituting herself for drugs and a place to stay.
Did she ever tell you why she started running away?
She said she ran away from my mother's house because she was molested. By my brother. But I didn't know that this was going on. If I had known, I wouldn't have kept her there. I would have brought her home.
I'm called a cheap bitch by my family. I'm 16 years old and I have 2 babies. One's 6 months and one's 18 months. And I do drugs, both kinds, brown and white. Anyway, I've been doing this since I was 11 years old. I've been raped so many times. The first time I was 9 years old. My stepdad and his brothers, they trained me, one after another. I told my mom, but she didn't believe me. So when I was 10 years old, I told my school nurse that I was hurting. So they looked into that, and they got charged and went to prison. I do this to buy what I need, Pampers, milk, or whatever we need. I would like to change my lifestyle, but I don't know what else to do. My friend says there's help and hope, so I would like to see anybody for help. Sign, somebody that needs help.
Most of the time they are being controlled by men in their lives who are older adult men who are either supplying them with drugs or the women are in relationships with older men with real age differentials, and it impacts them in the heroin addiction, or we see this also with cocaine addiction in young girls, keeps them locked into these dysfunctional, abusive relationships with these older men who often are using them for sex, not only to raise money for themselves, but also for the girls to support their own drug habits. So, and the women come in contact with our program as they grow up, and the men end up in our program in their 20s and 30s with long-term heroin addiction. We hear their stories of their early life and sexual abuse.
And I just started coming out from the use of drugs, heroin, cocaine. And I tried it, and then I liked it, and I kept using after, you know, and then heroin started getting sick, so I was like, basically I needed to use to be active, to get out and, you know, to do whatever I have to do. The girls that are out there right now, God, please help them. And I know that they don't want to be out there, but they have to because of our drugs situation or whatever. If I wasn't high, I felt ugly. I felt used. I felt like if I was nobody. Like if I wasn't worth even living. It's hard. It's hard. I can say that. It's a struggle every day. To, you know, worry about where am I going to get some money? What am I going to do? Where am I going to stay? And right under the bridge, I mean, there's like all these men, and, you know, I'm the only female, you know, I don't know what can happen. I really don't know. I really don't know, you know. I've almost gotten raped, I don't know how many times.
I am 19 years old. I have 5 kids, and I have a husband. My husband can't find a job because we are both drug addicts. I walk the street day and night so I can make money to buy drugs and food. And I sell my body for sex in exchange for money. I ask for help for both of us and my kids. My friend said there is help. Please help.
Once somebody gets into this kind of lifestyle and that's all they know, it's kind of hard to get out. You know, the victim had been through all kinds of counseling and
how do you get that child's innocence back? You can't.
23 years old. I've been doing this since I was 15 years old. I have 4 kids and I don't know who their father is. I can't take care of them, so I gave them up to foster parents. Right now, I don't know if I am pregnant. Where can I go to seek help? Please help. I need help.
When human trafficking cases first started coming in, nobody really knew what to expect. Was it going to be labor trafficking? Was it going to be sex trafficking? What we've seen typically coming into the district attorney's office have been child sex abuse, human trafficking, or domestic minor sex trafficking. We have seen girls anywhere between 13 to 16 years of age. There are typically multiple perpetrators. We prosecute a combination of both the people who have originally trafficked the child, as well as, if we can figure out who they are, the individuals who are using those children for sexual services. And so in our cases, we have one child and usually multiple perpetrators, anywhere from 3 up to 7 in the cases that we currently have pending, and they're all surrounding that one child and the experiences that child has had to go through.
Your children that live in the utmost and best of homes in this community can be subject to this. These guys target teens, someone they can lie to, impress upon them, and then later on they will begin to use force on them. And the bottom line is they want to get them out there making money off of them. I've reviewed cases where teens have outcried that they've had to serve as many as 30, 40 clients a day.
There is no adult that has ever been true to them, has ever been honest with them, except for the pimp, this trafficker. In their mind, that person, that adult, is the one sole person that has ever been true to them and honest to them, and they believe anything that this trafficker says. So that is why it's so difficult when law enforcement comes into play with anybody else who is seriously, honestly trying to help them. It's so much more difficult for them to get to that child because all they believe is the honesty of the trafficker.
Kids that have been abused or severely abused
don't necessarily flee their caregivers. Some do. But frequently, or lots of times, they want to return to the caregivers. And so in the sex trafficking literature, they talk about trauma bonding and to bond with the trafficker, you know, like this one protector, kids running back to that, so they have to be locked up in juvenile justice and charged with prostitution versus, you know, to sort of protect them or whatever, and the effects of that. But you see that same dynamic with other kids. I mean, the idea of what's known, the idea, those whole dynamics I talked about, of kind of the known being so much more comfortable than the unknown, the anxiety of the new, can drive kids back to the same situations.
And the other thing is sometimes their traffickers have told them, don't you, this is the shtick you're going to give to law enforcement if you get picked up. Or don't you tell them anything, they're out to get you. Or maybe the kids will run away. And so they aren't going to tell law enforcement anything because they're going to, if they do, they're going to get picked up and put back into CPS care. And that's the last thing they want to do. Or be truant or get put in juvenile. And so, you know, there are many, many reasons that these kids do not tell about what happened to them, or when they do tell, it's a partial truth.
50% of the streetwalkers take care of themselves. They carry condoms, it's either rapid or nothing, but then there are those who don't care because they have to eat tomorrow. They have to eat tonight. They have to have a place to stay. But nobody has taken the time to educate them, to tell them there's other ways. They don't have training because they've been out in the streets since they were 15, 16, 17 years old. That's all they know.
Well, the similarities are that they're all being trafficked out, so they have to be out there, selling themselves for money. Again, money is the bottom line for these people, and for us to say, well, one is doing this and the other, they're all doing whatever it takes to make money for their traffickers.
One day, we went to her house, and there was all these guys there, and I was barely starting, so she told me, well, yeah, let's do this guy, and then he'll pay you. And then I was like, okay. So I went in and I did what I had to do. He left, and then I was trying to get ready to leave, and then there comes another one like four after each other, yeah, and then I was calling her and yelling, like, come, like, and she wouldn't come, and I could hear her, like, out there talking with the guys out there talking. We left. She had all this money that she had made off of me because of those guys that had done that to me. And I just got paid for one guy. She got paid for all the other ones.
No, he didn't force me to. But I couldn't leave. I had nowhere to go. Another parent that I was with, and I had a manager that liked me. And I had a guy that was working for him that liked me. And they forced me. They forced me. It was like, if you want to live here, this is what you gotta do.
And did he force you into any sexual acts?
No, but when I wouldn't, he would get really mad. He used to get so mad because he told me, I'd buy you everything you want, but you can't even do that one thing for me. But I guess he didn't understand what it feels like to sleep with a guy who's like 40 years older than I am.
One of the things that I understand happens as these children and or even young teens are transitioned into this trafficking is that they have to be submissive. And so they're beaten, they're starved. They have to be completely submissive to the person who's trying to traffic them so that they won't put up a fight or they won't make any disclosure about what's going on.
I couldn't get away from him. I didn't have any way to get away from him. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any way to post ads. I didn't have any way to get a plane ticket. I didn't have any way to get a hotel room or rent a car or the phone. He took my phone and gave me a prepaid phone so that he could keep track of the calls I was making. So he knew if I talked to somebody who wasn't a client. He would beat me whenever I got out of line. And he made sure he never hit me in the face. You know, he'd beat me with a belt, and he'd leave welts, and then he'd tell me to tell clients I had a master sub BDSM session that went wrong. He basically controlled me through isolation, and the fact that if I didn't work, then he wouldn't pay my bills, and my son would be homeless.
My mom will take them to go and sell their bodies to do their dates.
Just for me to go out and get money, because he wasn't going to do it. He was just going to stay there waiting for me to come home with money because he was too sick to get up. So I had to go out and go do it. I had to go out and go out and sell my body in. I had to go do stuff that I never thought I was going to go do just to come home and bring him money. I don't know, I guess he knows how to manipulate people so much to where he can get what he wants. So he took me and then he beat me up. And when he was having sex with me, he was just like hitting me, and then in my mind I was wondering like, how could he even like still do it while he's hitting me and telling me stuff and everything. He didn't even care if people were passing by that they could see, and then people were passing by and they wanted to shit, and it was like close to a highway. How could they not see it? And he was just telling me a lot of stuff. He was saying, "No, you're just a fucking bitch. You're not worth nothing. And I'm not even gonna fucking pay you. And you're gonna stay here. And you're gonna walk home. I'm not gonna give you a ride back where I picked you up." So he beat me up, and then he didn't pay me, and he left.
Yes, a pimp is a human trafficker. The pimp is the guy who is promoting the prostitution. He is forcing the girls into the sex industry. Pimps are like one of the lowest life forms on earth. They refer to the girls as bitches to demean them. They refer to them as a stable. They treat the women as livestock. They demean them as livestock. And they take away all their personification, their personalities. They are directed to do everything. So this is what the pimp does. He is only worried about selling them to as many Johns as possible and making his money at the end of the day. There are some small startup operations, and there are some very large organized criminal enterprises that have networks and circuits. They'll come into one town and they'll sell the girls, they'll promote them on the internet, and they'll be gone at the end of the week, and they'll be off to another state, another place. We try to provide information to the federal government and work with them on this, but it's a very huge, huge umbrella. The John is the guy who is looking for sex. He is he's the one that's in this that has the demand. There's other programs to try to address demand. So the John is looking for sex, and the pimp is the one that provides the sex services to them.
For instance, if you're out on the street and the person that's providing you food or providing you shelter or providing you the drugs that you're hooked on is your pimp, okay? And that's your street dad. That's the person that's protecting you when one of your calls goes wrong, or that's the person who's coming to your aid in some way. You begin to create that sort of relationship with that individual, whether it's sexual or not sexual. It doesn't really matter. I've had situations with both. We have one where we've got a pimp who's actually sleeping with a victim. We have another one where the pimp wasn't, but he was putting her out on the street, and he literally viewed himself, and she called him her street dad. And it took a lot to help her recognize, I am a victim. I should not be in this situation. This person doesn't care about me or love me. They are using me for their own ends.
These teenagers are being used. They're being played for profit. And the reason it's so successful now, human trafficking is second only worldwide in profit to arms dealing. It's overtaken drugs as profit. See, when you sell a drug, you sell it one time. You can sell a human 10 times a day.
We would like to cut off the demand. We do conduct operations where we go after the Johns. We put some of our undercover female officers out there and go after the Johns. Obviously, if there's no demand, then it's not going to be a product. There's always going to be a product where there's a demand, and as long as there's a demand, we're going to have these kind of crimes. We try and do both. Obviously we go after the offenders, but we also go after the Johns that are, buying these girls or these individuals. So it's a two-pronged approach. I mean, if we could cut off the demand, then that would solve the whole problem.
But I do think that we have to start treating the Johns as perpetrators. We have to start treating the Johns as criminals, rather than treating the minor as a criminal who's being forced into it.
While I was at that school, I finally told the staff about the abuse from when I was a child. And they recognized the molestation as abuse, they recognized the rape as abuse, but when I told them about the men bringing me clients and working as a prostitute to take care of myself and survive, they literally said that's prostitution, not abuse. And when I told my dad about what happened, he told me he could never tell me who did it, who abused me, because he would do something about it, which placed the blame of his actions on me, and again, and reiterated that you have to keep it to yourself attitude.
So many times when I have them, or when I see them in facilities or out in the streets where they, they'll do an outcry, or they come across my business card or my phone number from word of mouth, they're usually as young as maybe 16, 17, sometimes older, but by then they've already been through several judicial systems, in and out of schools. Many of them have even graduated from high school. Some of them can read and write. Just the basic skills, the knowledge that they should have. Very little development in terms of education. Emotional development as well as sexual development is retarded as well.
And my mom, she's all like, this happens because you want it to happen. Mom, you actually think that I want this to happen? Like, she's the kind of person that sometimes can't get along because she's never got molested. Nothing's ever happened to her. She says, because I would go tell them what my uncle's touching me. Oh, yeah, you just want attention, and you just, they wouldn't listen to me. They'll say that I wanted attention, that my uncle never did anything to me. It wasn't anything but lies, that I wanted attention. And it hurts me because my own mother didn't believe me. My own family believed me.
What I see inevitably, and I think the research and the data supports this, is that their experience of sexual abuse as children not only impacted their sexual and cognitive development, but also their medical and physical mental health. And in addition to that, it also impacted their brain chemistry. It altered all of these areas forever in a way that has adversely affected them. They have, by adversely, I mean they have serious issues related to mental health, to intimacy, to relationships, to engaging in high-risk behaviors that people have a hard time understanding. And unless you understand this background, then you can begin to understand, okay, so this is where it's, and it's not to justify, but it's to become more educated on why they may be engaging in these behaviors.
I can't sleep because of anxiety. I can't sleep. I'm afraid to sleep because I have those dreams, and it's like I better not sleep than to have those kind of dreams. Or then, I have the ugliest dreams, I hate to even, there's times that, and then I get stressed out because I don't sleep, and it's like, I don't know, I don't even know anymore what to do with my life. I tried to kill myself a lot of times already. I still dream about that, and I cry, and my kids wake me up, and they're like, Mommy, are you okay? You're crying. I'd rather just kill myself. You know what I mean? Just do away with myself already. I'm tired of it.
Kids that have been subject to complex trauma, that is repetitive, overlapping, traumatic stressors, traumatic events, are affected in multiple ways. And these are kids that have been subject to, from early on, episodes of domestic violence or community violence or traumatic losses or physical and sexual abuse, separations from caregivers, dramatic fluctuations in the tone and of the caregiving. And each one of these events singly is not necessarily an event that would have lasting effects, but taken in multiple doses in what is frequently an unsupportive environment or a not good enough caretaking environment, has been shown to affect fairly dramatically how the brain functions.
Most of these women have not sought or received professional services for this. So this has lingered and festered and grown through the years. And like I said, by the time we see them here, the issues are so severe, it's out of control.
Working with victims, whoever they are, and I don't even like the word victim at all, I wish we could just eliminate it, but working with women who have known abuse or we work with women, but with men, it takes a long time. It takes a relationship. There's no quick fix for these people. We may send them to court and prosecute the case, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Just because we prosecuted a case and won, we are a long way from success. If we say we are a victim-oriented society, and if our trafficking legislation is victim-oriented, that is a long-term fix. It's not a cheap fix and it's not a fast fix. It takes relationships. These young men and women need to know that people care about them and that life is good and that this is a good world, that just takes time.
My patience is paying off because I'm able to see the differences now. As before, I wasn't as patient. I was angry because I wasn't seeing the results fast as I wanted them to. But like I said, you have to give them time. It's a process. The healing is a process. But it does happen. It does happen.
Pay attention to who they're talking to on the internet. I'm not saying she ran away to somebody on the internet, but there was a pattern of behavior that I look back now and I think she at 13 years old was telling people she was 22 on the internet. She was talking to men on the internet.
So that's where you think the roots came from?
I do. I do. I think that maybe the situation with my brother pushed it, brought it to a head, but I think it's always been there. I mean, her father committed suicide 4 years ago. And so I think all of that just kind of made her not care enough about herself to keep from doing these things. Because I don't think she respects herself. Sometimes I wonder if she's hoping that somebody does kill her.
Most of these victims come to us that they're so broken and scarred and they have so much shame in their lives. You can tell when you first come and you see someone and meet with them for the first time, they don't give you eye contact, they lower their eyes, they have very low self-esteem. The hurt of the heart is so prevalent, what they've been through. Most of them feel they're the only ones that have gone through this, that no one would understand them. They think they're crazy. They may have had multiple diagnoses of different disorders. And in the cycle of violence is that realm of the human trafficking identification that's so easily missed because of so many people being in their niche and in their box of specialties. They often don't see the complexities, and they are They don't feel understood. It's hard for them to even give themselves permission to believe that they were a victim.
Scared all the time. I just want to go home. What I want to do is go take a bath, rub myself, rub all that, you know, like the shame that I had. It was a lifestyle that I didn't want. I hated it. These disgusting.
When you're told all your life, all you're good for is fucking and sucking, and all you're good for is making money, and once a hoe, always a hoe, you begin to believe it. You begin to believe that that really is all you're worth.
All of us have the opportunity to encounter someone who's being abused, and that is our job to recognize it and call that information into the hotline.
I believe the primary barrier for addressing domestic minor sex trafficking is misidentification. I believe that's something that Shared Hope International also found in their research. Misidentification is really results in a lot of negative outcomes. Because when you misidentify your client, then you're not giving them the appropriate services that they need.
You become much more aware of things when someone that you know speaks to that issue, okay? You may be an activist type of person, you may go to a presentation about it, but there's a large group of people who don't have time to go to that or aren't activists in that sense and aren't going to go out and seek that information. It's going to have to come from their church or from their social group or from their book club or from someone that's a friend of theirs who cares about the issue and speaks to it.
I would say listen to the kids when they're out there telling you something's happening, or watch them closely, because you never know, somebody could be doing something to them or sending them out to do things that they don't want to do.
Communication is so important with your children. Please talk to your child if you see any differences. If you see any minor differences, talk to them.
You have been a child yourself. So as a human being, there is no excuse, and as a community member, there really isn't any excuse today when we have all of the media and all of the modes of communication telling us that all of these awful problems do exist. I don't really find an excuse for anyone just to say, it's them, it's not me.
It's very simple, reading. Sometimes you read stories, you come across articles, a lot of it is just becoming aware, being aware of what's out there and taking an interest, taking a few minutes to just read and gain a better understanding. 1, 2 is, I think a lot of people are so quick to judge. It's almost like the minute they hear something, it's right away, a judgment. And I think if people could just slow down and look at everything before speaking and become more knowledgeable before making a statement that is one of judgment or accusatory, one should step back, look, and more than anything else, listen.
Basically, the legislative changes that occurred in this legislative session, they changed the law on human trafficking, and this office was part of rewriting that law. And one of the things that we implemented in regard to children is we changed prostitution to what's called a CHINS offense, or a child in need of supervision offense, so that it became a non-status offense, and that child can still be picked up as a child in need of supervision if they're engaging in that conduct, but not prosecuted in the sense of being criminalized, but able to be brought into the system, interviewed. You start to try and figure out what's behind their actual circumstances.
Little things do matter. And now we've got the cooperation of TABC, of law enforcement, of course of all of our faith-based community and our advocates. We still need to do more. We're really going to make a push on healthcare providers. But it's little by little. 1991, I couldn't even get a hearing on any bill. 1993, we're a little bit more successful. 95, certainly through the 90s, and now, working together, we can get this stuff done.
just want to let people know that there is hope, that people do recover from addiction, and that they are able to get to a place where, with good counseling and therapy, they can learn to survive these really awful experiences that have happened to them. I think that they need to not feel that shame that comes with not only having sexual abuse, but also having addiction issues, because it's like having a double whammy on you. And they need to know that people do get recovery, and that there's a world of other women out there that have been through what they've been through.
I am finally in a place where I'm beginning to understand what happened to me. I'm beginning to understand why I did what I did. I'm beginning to understand who I am as a woman. I'm beginning to understand how my victimization has affected me as a mother, as a woman, and soon to be wife.
And I want to let people know, especially the women that are out there, that there's hope for their life. What I'm sharing right now is probably, just a piece of stuff in my life that I've seen. I've seen a lot of violence in my life. I've experienced it. I've done it. And I stand here today as a woman that has overcome in spite of what I've gone through, what I've done, what I've been through, because of God has overcome all these things in her life, and today has hope. And that was something that I never had. I never had hope. I never knew what it was like to feel love.
The problem is that people didn't recognize the signs. They didn't recognize the outcries. They didn't recognize the voices. They didn't recognize, the circumstances that would lead up to that. You don't have to be a social worker to do something. You don't have to work in social services. You don't have to be a police officer. You don't have to be a politician. You just have to be aware. So when it does cross your way, you could just be a teacher, you could be a neighbor, you could be a friend, you could be a relative. So when you see the signs, you recognize it, and then you act on it. You don't have to act now. The point is act on it when you see it. That's why we have a problem.
We've got to create a community where all of us take part in the solution. It cannot just be someone else's problem. It is all of our problem.
A cherry sweet smile, a warm-hearted laugh. These are the memories of an innocence long past in the world of this type of child. Why? For those things have been replaced by harsh smacks to the face, being tied up in a basement so there is no escape, only so that a macabre-minded adult can taste what they should truly never have. All for the purpose of what? Making cash? So now that child's body is for sale, risking disease and chance of jail, all because, well, mom was a crackhead and sold them into the game, or they ran away from home and just couldn't maintain the street life, with feelings of fleeing the life they were leading only to be swallowed by the night. These poor, poor wretches. That's what I call them, for their humanity is gone. Soulless husks who do what they must in fear of arms that are strong. I mean, classified with the scum of society through no real fault of their own. I mean, really? Really? These are children. Children. Has the world gone insane? Allowing the beatings of frequent non-feedings and heroin pumped through their veins? Oh, but no, we mustn't stop the cash flow. There's money to be made. It comes in amounts that pad big bank accounts comparable to drug trade. Now, who could have ever thought, certainly not me, that we could force a being to do these strange things, but such is the art of slavery. Free enterprise. More like sacrificing our enterprise and paying the cost with a child's innocent hide. The fact that we allow this is our ultimate shame. Closed ears to the screams, afraid to intervene. Are we really the home of the brave? Well, I guess we are in some respects. For it takes a brave soul to be this cold and pimp a child with no regrets.